It is a politically astute move, but will it relieve rural distress? Just what does the Modi government's move to increase the minimum support price for 14 crops mean? The global freshwater crisis is throwing up some, believe it or not, solutions. Let's lasso an iceberg from Antarctica, proposes a UAE company. And surgical interventions, corrective rape, shock therapy, only some of the horrific techniques used to, quote, cure homosexuals, now banned in the United Kingdom. It's a moment of pride. It's Friday, July 6th. Going into an election year, the Modi government has announced an increase in minimum support price for 14 crops grown in the Kharif season, including paddy, cotton, soybean, pulses and millets. A move the government hopes will ease rural distress. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley in this year's budget had declared the government would increase the minimum support price to 50% above the cost of production. Now, what is MSP or minimum support price, and how is it calculated? The government promises farmers a minimum support price for 23 crops. The minimum support price represents a promise from the centre that it will step in and buy these crops if their market prices fall below a certain level. This price is based on the estimated cost of production. Each year, the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices estimates the cost of production for various crops using three definitions. The first is A2, which represents the actual amount farmers spend on growing a crop each season. This includes inputs such as seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, and wages for agricultural workers. The second definition is A2 plus FL. It represents the actual input costs as well as the implied economic value of family members working on the farm, which offsets the wages the farmer might otherwise have paid. The third definition is C2, which represents A2 plus FL and the value of capital assets, including rent and interest on the land. The government has increased minimum support prices this year to at least 50% above A2 plus FL. Why is setting minimum support prices at 50% more than cost of production significant? This was one of Narendra Modi's campaign promises in the run-up to the 2014 general election. But months after coming to power, the BJP government scrapped the state's policy of paying their own bonus amount above the minimum support price to farmers. Increasing the minimum support price to 50% above the cost of production was also a key demand of farmer groups that protested all through the year 2017, though they believe that minimum support price should be 1.5 times C2 and not A2 plus FL. Only the minimum support price for bajra is close to 50% more than C2. The demand itself originates in the 2006 report of the National Commission on Farmers, led by agricultural scientist M.S. Swaminathan, which recommended, among others, that the minimum support price be at least 1.5 times C2. Is this really the highest increase in minimum support price? The last time minimum support prices went up this much over the previous year was in 2012-2013, when the central government raised prices by 15% for paddy and to 53% for jowar. Before and after that, the increase in minimum support prices has tended to be incremental, ranging between 1 and 10% in any given year. This year, the increase in minimum support prices ranged from 4% for tuar dal, a crop that is politically sensitive, to 52% for ragi. Do minimum support prices help farmers? While the government promises minimum support prices for 23 crops, in practice, it procures mostly paddy and wheat, both food grains that it can channel into the public distribution system for economically disadvantaged people, and some pulses. Even in the case of paddy and grain, most of the procurement is done in the northern states of Haryana and Punjab. For farmers in other states, there is less certainty of whether the government will indeed buy their crops. As for other crops, the minimum support price remains, for the most part, on paper. These are residents from a locality in Vadodara district of Gujarat, falling at the feet of the Deputy Municipal Commissioner, an act of desperation by residents facing an acute drinking water shortage. Gujarat has been facing a severe water crisis this summer. Last month, we had reported on the dire picture painted by the government policy think tank Niti Aayog's report on what it called the worst water crisis in India's history. The report claimed that by 2020, 21 major cities including Delhi, Bengaluru and Hyderabad are expected to reach zero groundwater levels, affecting access for 100 million people. The crisis is not limited to India. This NASA satellite data shows 21 of the Earth's 37 largest aquifers are being depleted, with 13 being significantly distressed, threatening regional water security. Now, in what may be categorized as a believe it or not potential solution, Gulf News reports that a UAE firm has plans to tow huge icebergs from the Antarctica to the country's coastline in an ambitious 12,000-kilometer journey by early 2020. This to deal with the problem of shortage of fresh water. This promotional video, released by the firm entitled UAE Iceberg Project, shows how they intend to haul an iceberg from near the Heard Island north of Antarctica across 12,000 kilometers to the coast of Fujairah. An average large iceberg contains about 20 billion gallons of water, enough for 1 million people for over 5 years. The National Advisor Bureau Limited believes it will lose 30 to 40% of each iceberg during the year-long journey. The pilot phase of the project will kick off during the second half of 2019 towards the coast of Perth in Australia or the coast of Cape Town in South Africa. Now, has this been attempted before? Is it even possible? Well, nothing of this magnitude. The Encyclopedia of Antarctica states that the first recorded instance of iceberg towing was the export of small icebergs from a place in southern Chile to another location in the country as part of a refrigerating ice supply business. The idea of using iceberg ice for drinking and irrigation was first suggested by John D. Isaacs of the Scripps Institute of Oceanography in 1949. He sought to relieve California's water shortage by towing icebergs from Alaska or Antarctica. There was no technology available then, but in 1960s, iceberg towing evolved in the Labrador Sea for protecting oil rigs from icebergs. Two major conferences were held to study the idea in 1977 and 1980 in Iowa and Cambridge, respectively. The Saudi government in particular was interested in an alternative to expensive desalination. The discussion concluded that icebergs melt when towed through equatorial waters and no viable insulation method existed, and so the destination must be in the same hemisphere as the source. The ideal site should have cold surface water and favorable currents along the towing route. But haven't there been technological advancements since? Grant Pick, the author of the 2015 book Icebergs, told The Guardian, "There are two major problems. One is getting a vessel that's strong enough to tow the size of iceberg you need. The second is breakup and melting. It would probably be feasible to get an iceberg a kilometer or two wide up to the Arabian Sea, but you would lose an awful lot of mass on the way. It's quite likely it would fracture before you got there. Synthetic fiber ropes, which are stronger than steel, can be slung around the icebergs at the waterline, but when tugging begins, the rope can slip off or make the iceberg roll over. Another reason towing must be done slowly and carefully is that dragging an iceberg through the ocean can make it break apart. Plus, there is the massive cost. A single iceberg towing vessel can cost around $75,000 a day, and to tow a massive iceberg might need several ships for months at a time." Pride Month ended on June 30th, but UK's biggest gift for its LGBT community came in July with the announcement of a complete ban on conversion therapy. Prevalent across the world, conversion therapy includes methods employed by medical or pseudo-medical professionals to quote-unquote cure lesbian, gay or bisexual individuals of their sexual preference. These range from pseudo-psychological treatments to, in extreme cases, surgical interventions, even corrective rape as defined by the UK government. One of the most popular treatments remains shock therapy, where an individual is shown pictures of naked men and women with shocks accompanying pictures of the same gender. In one variation, the shock is replaced by apomorphine, a drug that induces nausea and diarrhea. The idea is that the individual will now associate the discomfort or pain with the same gender. Chemical castration, where gay men are administered estrogen to lower libido, something that World War II mathematician Alan Turing suffered through, also exists. Patrick Strudwick, LGBT editor of BuzzFeed UK, on an undercover mission, underwent conversion therapy and said, "The level of harm and damage done is beyond what you can possibly imagine. I ended up having neurological episodes." Conversion therapy is already completely banned in Brazil, Ecuador, Malta, and Canada. The move comes after a survey of over 1 lakh members of UK's LGBT community found that 7% had either undergone the therapy or had been offered it. The survey found that faith organizations like Catholic communities, which consider homosexuality a sin, were most likely to adopt the practice, but also highlighted that several people went voluntarily, actually believing there was something wrong with them. As UK Prime Minister Theresa May said, no one should ever have to hide who they are or who they love. And finally, here is the quarter-final lineup for the FIFA World Cup. Uruguay versus France on Friday. France's teenage superstar Kylian Mbappe wowed the world with his lightning-quick runs against Argentina, but on Friday he will be tested by arguably the best four-man defense seen in this World Cup. Then there's Brazil versus Belgium also on Friday. To many, this is the final before the final, the eternal favourites versus the potential giants. On Saturday, you have Sweden versus England. England are already dreaming about the cup coming home after 52 years of agony, but stubborn Sweden will be all too glad to play the role of the underdog. Also on Saturday, Russia versus Croatia. Host Russia have surpassed all expectations by making it to the quarterfinals, but they will have to get past Croatia's golden generation to reach the semis. That's us, kickstarting your weekend football fever. We'll be back Monday to kickstart your next week too. Stay with us.